Welcome back to the Young Americans podcast. This is episode 8, so this is a great podcast to listen to while you're crying because we're studying for the AP test just like we are. So we got Joe up in this jot. What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's going on, man? Are you ready? As
I,
ready or
I'm
not as ready as I am?
I'm hella not ready. I don't know about you.
I,
So
I'm not doing this podcast. I'm not. Wait. Yeah. No, I'm not doing this podcast because I'm ready, bro. Like, you know
nor
what I
am
mean?
I. But hopefully this should help you study, like you have a little break. So you just have to listen to us and, sit with us for however long this takes, whatever that might be. So Mr. Edwards says something about period 1 not like being there. We just said, yeah, so period 2, Jamestown. So to lay it all
Well,
down,
before we go, we're gonna talk a little bit. I think talk a little more about the periods we're doing. We're only
yeah.
doing periods
Okay.
two,
So
two through
we're doing 2
five.
through 5 today.
Two
We're
through
not
five.
doing everything. If you want to learn a little more about period 6, we have a podcast on that. Our podcasts
Right.
go from Gilded Age onwards. So if you
To like
want
World War
anything
Two.
after what we talk about today, go find our other podcasts. They're not going to be as in depth as the one tonight. But if you really just want something, like if you love our podcast that much, which would be surprising, go check them out. So yeah,
Yeah, and we're gonna try to make this as interesting as we can, right? I mean,
yeah,
if
but
we don't know something, we'll look it up in the middle of the podcast, right? This is a
yeah.
study of reason. We're trying to make this interesting for you guys, and um, I'm ready when you are.
Hell yeah. So, Jamestown, right? So you got 3 types of colonies. So you got charter, royal, and joint stock. So charter, also known, yeah, charter. They're just given a charter and they do it. Royal is ruled by the crown, right? So it's just direct rule from England, and then wait a second. Yeah, charter is self-rule. Joint stock is a little different. Um,
They're usually run by a business of some sort, I believe,
Yeah.
is what
Then
that
there's the
is.
proprietary one, and that's self-rule. So proprietary colonies is like Maryland with Lord Baltimore.
Right.
So anyways, Jamestown started as a joint stock, but it lost its charter because they weren't doing too well. They weren't getting all that Virginia tobacco as the king pleased, so it transitioned into a
They
royal
literally
colony.
ran out of water, even though they're like right next to
Yeah.
some estuaries.
Yep.
Like,
So they had a really hard winter, and then they shot people for stealing corn, and that was cool. And
I guess
so,
boiling water wasn't big back then, but
well, yeah. Yeah, so, and then people got mad because it was royal colony because he didn't have the rights of Englishmen. So they made this thing called the Representative Assembly in Virginia, which was really cool unless you're not a property owning male because you couldn't vote unless you were one. So that's kind of how that went down, and people didn't like that. Then you have Lord Baltimore in Maryland, and so we got the Act of Toleration. Joe, can you enlighten us a little bit on the Act of Toleration?
Man, am I proud of this one because we're both Catholics here.
Catholic gang.
Okay, gang. So it's pretty much the Catholics who were a majority, or at least had quite a population within Maryland, saw this Protestant all these
Uprising.
uprising, really Protestant uprising, and they wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be not like convicted, but you know what I mean. They wouldn't be charged with being Catholic later in the future. So they had the Act of Toleration where it said if you're Christian, any Christian, you can practice freely within Maryland.
But if
But
you
if you're
denounce Jesus, that is a crime.
no,
So
if you're a Jew, good luck. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
If you,
so yeah, sorry about that. I love Jewish people. They're great. And then 1600, I believe it's 1600, you have the Protestant revolt, and they win, and then Catholics can't vote. So people don't like Catholics. Still the only church founded by Jesus. Get some.
give it another I don't know 350 years until Catholicism is
Yeah, buddy.
more widely.
And so headright system. So Joe, what's the headright system?
Oh shit! What's
Yeah,
the headright system?
don't look
I
at the
don't
notes.
know.
So attract immigrants. Okay, so essentially, if you pay your own passage, you just get a 50-acre jaunt. They're just like boom, 50 acres. I'm sitting on a quarter-acre plot right now, right? Like that's my house, a quarter acre. So they're giving you
Right.
50, right? 50 whole acres. Well, it's really important because plantation owners, if you paid for someone else's passage to come work at your plantation, you get 50 more acres to your plantation. So it was a really
That's
plantation owner based jaunt.
that is not a small amount of land.
That no, it is not, my good sir. I think I do hunt on a 100-acre property though. I don't know it's ginormous. It really is a large amount of space. And then we got Bacon's Rebellion. So Bacon was like, "Yo, Governor Berkeley, I don't like
What you
you.
do?
You're not doing enough to protect us from the natives, and all the large plantations are ruling over us. So he got his drunk buddies, and they went and they burned Jamestown, and then they got hung over and lost the rebellion, and Berkeley executed 23 rebels. So wouldn't want to be them. Yeah.
All
Um,
right.
King.
King's Philip's War. So there was the Wampanoags
So if,
and
if you remember our one time where we played Jeopardy and we couldn't come up with King Philip's name, it's King Philip. It's this guy.
so
Um,
the Prophet. No, no, that's later.
yes. Oh
No, that's
yeah.
later. I think
That's
it's later
later.
on.
That's later.
All right. Anyway, the Wampanoags and other banded tribes. They pretty much waged war on the Americans.
Because we're taking their land, right?
No, the colonists more so, and it's
Oh, okay.
because they were just
They were like encroaching on their land, right?
exactly
Like
they're doing
hunting and farming and all that. Yeah, and it's just like
and
oh,
living and
yeah, I know
Christianity.
existing. Yeah, all that. And
Yeah.
then King Philip got murked. He got domed,
Uh,
and then that got put to rest.
yeah,
And
did
so,
not.
yeah, that
Yeah,
didn't fly. So, yeah, bad treatment of natives. Remember that. Mr. Edwards has the hunch about natives, so just remember that. Then we got the Trade and Navigation Acts. So that's like, hey, cool, you're a colony, but you can only trade with us because we want to regulate you.
right.
And so colonists really didn't like that because they're drunk people who like their rights. And so they had this thing. So the British government was like, fine, 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 fine. Salutary neglect. So it's kind of we'll look the blind eye and we'll very loosely enforce you, John, right?
Yeah,
And then
pretty
Joe,
much adults don't treat people who are at war with us, I guess.
yeah, for sure, some along the lines of that. And then Joe, if you could lead us into the Great Awakening.
All right, I believe this was a religious awakening. Especially in the North, you have new this new religious upcoming, right? One thing that came along with this was that you no longer had to have this huge epiphany within the church to be a member. That's one thing that helped continue to it. I believe was it George Whitfield? Was he was
Well,
he a preacher?
what you're talking about is the Halfway Covenant.
Halfway Covenant, right? I
Yes,
believe that's during this era, though, right?
something like that. Yeah. And
Uh,
so,
yeah,
but most importantly for the Great Awakening is you have Jonathan Edwards, The Wrath of Hell. So I can't do it as well as Mr. Edwards did it, probably because my name isn't Edwards, but, like, you're all going to burn in hell, so, yeah. Westboro
yikes.
Baptist. And, yeah, so he wrote Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God. That is the literature associated with Edwards. Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God. So just, book questions. Then we have the Zanger trial. So you have like this disgruntled newspaper guy who doesn't like the government, and he published something,
Truthful. I
anti-governmenty,
figured it was,
truthful.
it was
Yeah,
truthful
it
too.
was truthful, but I mean,
Okay.
it was pretty, extreme, and so he went to court and he won. So, you know, the criticism of government was upheld, which that's good. And then you had the Sugar Act and the Quartering Act, which is bad because you know
I believe it was tax on sugar, and then the quarter act was British soldiers can just live in your house.
yep.
Like,
So I believe that's why we had the Third Amendment later on, was so that
yeah,
way, like,
yeah, that's the amendment.
they can never just make soldiers live in your house. And then yes, the Sugar Act, it was on not just sugar but like any kind of fine import. Sugar. I can't think of anything right now, but anything, the exquisite things
I believe
of.
stamps came in.
And then yes, you had the Stamp Act as well.
Eventually, you'll
And
have
so
tea.
this is
The,
where we cue the John Adams theme, and they do the whole, the Boston Massacre happens, and then they all get drunk, dress up as natives, and then do the Tea Party. And so that's why coffee is a drink of patriots. That's why I always say that, because the Tea Party, we threw it all in the ocean. So, yeah, that happened. And then the Intolerable Acts came about because the British really didn't like having all their tea thrown into the harbor. So the Intolerable Acts led to the First Continental Congress. And then, revolution broke out. You have Lexington and Concord. We're not going to go super deep into revolution stuff because you guys should know this. But, Lexington and Concord happened. I believe it was over powder. Someone was trying to get someone else's powder. Then Bunker Hill happens as well. Then you have the Second Continental Congress. And so this is like where we're thinking, okay, do we want to try and apologize, or do we want to actually go full scale and try and declare independence? And
I
so,
think you guys know where this goes.
huge debate over that, right? And obviously you have pro and against. Thomas Paine writes Common Sense. That's another literature one. So that's essentially a bunch of reasons to rebel or to
Interesting
declare
thing about
independence.
common sense. I learned a long time ago. I think I was in sixth grade, but like it was like over 10,000 copies were made or something like that. That's a significant amount.
It
Uh,
was definitely a large number.
I'm not sure exactly the average amount. I know the printing press was already created at this time, and that in Philadelphia you had printing presses and stuff like that. But I believe that for a book that had just came out, that's a lot of copies of a book. So you really had this widespread idea of independence. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to put that out there. That
So we defeat Cornwallis at Yorktown. And that was the last major battle. There were still small skirmishes after that, but that was the last major one. And then
before,
we're
before we continue, can we
oh,
talk about what's it called, Lexington, right, in Concord, Bunker Hill at the beginning,
go for it.
and
I'm
then
eating a
Sarah.
banana, so carry it.
Oh, it's chill. We got Saratoga, which that's the turning point of the war because foreign. We now show that we can beat the British, and the British. We've proved to the outside world we can beat the British. I also believe there's something about like there's waterways up there that are useful if the British can access, but I'm not sure if College Board would really go that in depth because of how long ago this era was.
Hopefully
Um,
not.
yes, hopefully not on Jaw. Um,
On jaw.
on Jaw. You want to continue, you can, or I could Treaty of Paris if you'd like.
Treaty of Paris. So that happens. Um, if
War
anyone's
ends.
wondering how that banana was, it was fantastic. So I'm back. Treaty of Paris happens, and we have our independence. So we start with this fantastic way of government called the Articles of Confederation, and that it's all states' rights. It's like a communal. Everyone kind of does their own thing, and so we had different currencies, and we had you know like trade issues, and it was really bad because it's like we are one country, like we fought to be one country, but we're really 13 countries, and that was
Right.
bad.
I did notice a question, and neither of us may be able to answer this, but I see this question a lot. I've seen this in older um, SAQs from past AP exams. What were some positives and negatives? And we tend to focus on the negatives a lot because of how briskly we replace it. Because really, the Articles of Confederation, in my opinion, was just a piece of shit. So um, I'm trying to think currently, like, okay, what did the articles do that were positive? And I guess you could say it created a government, but the United States was a confederacy at this time, right? A confederacy, if you guys are from government, it's pretty much that these more independent, localized governments are stronger than the federal government. That's what a confederacy is. So the United States at this point is a confederacy. We can't force people to pay taxes. I mean, if if you were a what's it called, a new state, right, and you just broke away from the British, right, and you have an option to pay taxes to the federal government, you're gonna say no because we have extremely
Because
libertarian
it's drunk
ideas.
libertarians. Of course you're going to
Exactly.
say no. Taxation is theft.
I mean,
Where's
you
the
just had a
gin?
rebellion over whiskey not too long ago.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's coming up. Yep.
So,
And then the Constitution happens, and that's
oh, that's coming
better,
up, right?
much better.
Oh,
We
much
also
better.
have the Whiskey Rebellion. So I went to go visit the Bradford House, and so the Whiskey Rebellion is Hamilton passed through the Congress. He needed some revenue because he's a Federalist, and he was like, "Oh, great idea! Everyone drinks, whiskey here, so let's tax whiskey." And that did not go over well with drunk libertarian farmers. So they started a rebellion. And so Washington gave Hamilton some troops to try and, calm the rebellion down. And he did. He was able to stomp the rebellion, but it was very negatively viewed by the people. It's like, wow, okay, we just fought for this freedom, and now you're going to be tyrannical and use a bunch of troops. Like, that's an excessive use of power. We don't like that. And, you know, a small
And
stain in Washington's, you know, jaunt, but
I I think
Hamilton.
that that specifically the governmental power is a good thing to mention. That we could mention pretty much any time in this era, pretty much into the past Jeffersonian America, even in debate today. Um, the Federalists versus Democratic Republicans. You have this. Originally, I believe the Democratic Republicans did not want the Constitution. They did not support it. They thought, uh, we have these rules from the government, and it's going to be just like the British again. Well, except it'll just be our people doing it. And then they came to the compromise that if you have this Bill of Rights, then I guess the Congress can vote in favor. Our party members can vote in favor of this Constitution in Congress, and that's how that came to be. I have seen questions on that. I know we had questions on that in period 3 test. I believe is what it was.
Yes. And so the Bill of Rights, y'all should know it, but if you don't, it is freedom of speech, right to bear arms, shall not. I'll just leave that there. I believe the Third Amendment was about quartering. We cannot quarter troops in peacetime. Fourth Amendment is property right. Fifth Amendment.
I thought it was the one where like police couldn't just like.
Oh, it was search. It was search and seizure. Yeah. Joke, you take over.
Oh, Fifth Amendment. Oh, was that is that speedy trial?
Hold up, yeah, guys. fair trial. Yeah, I just said y'all should know it, and now you don't know it. Thanks, Joe, for looking it up.
Oh yeah.
10th Amendment is all undisclosed power. So it's like all
England. What the hell is this?
Dude, come on, man. We're the only cool Bill of Rights. All right, come on.
Okay.
At 10th is all the ones that were not specifically declared in the Constitution, but the people should have. Cruel and unusual punishment is in there.
Somewhere. Okay. Fifth, no. Okay. Let's see. No. Okay. So Fifth Amendment is no person shall be held for capital or an infamous crime, unless indictment of a grand jury. So by your peers, right? You get a jury by your peers. Sixth
right Amendment of jury.
Is a speedy trial, right to enjoy just and speedy trial. Seventh Amendment is no crazy bails or something like that.
Something no like cruel or unusual punishment.
No cruel, no cruel and unusual punishment level 8. Eighth Amendment is no excessive fines or cruel and unusual. Wait, what? No. Seventh guarantees you I have no idea. It prohibits judges from ruling the facts by. I think it has to do with your jury, right?
Yeah.
And the Eighth Amendment is cruel and unusual. Ninth Amendment is, shall not be disparaged by others. So I guess
we should not do an immigration podcast in the future because it looks like we would not be able to be citizens if we tried. So thank God I was born here. Anyways, after the what the hell? Bill of Rights. So after that, we got the farewell address, right? So Washington, resigns, and being the wise and great leader that he was like, no involvement in Europe, no political parties, no sectionalism. Oh, we had 3 jobs, right? And we failed all 3 of them. However, what happened. We had political parties like snap right after, pretty much right after Washington left. It wasn't really spoken of until like Jefferson and so on, but it, happened.
So like the 3rd president,
the
election of 1800.
It's like, okay, kids, like you can have the country now. Just like don't mess it up, okay? Like I trust you guys. Shouldn't have done that.
4 years later,
yeah. And so then we got Adams. Pretty cool guy, we watched a movie on that. That's all good. Alien Sedation Acts. So that is, you can't really criticize the government, I believe, was part of that. And then the Alien Acts was a lot less, like, it's harder to become a citizen. They can deport immigrants easier, all this stuff. So we'd probably get deported if we were in this time frame, Joe. I got to be honest with us.
Well, we are Catholics, so.
We are Catholic, yeah. Yep. No, we'd probably be hung. And then state can nullify federal law was somewhere in there. Through some pact. And so that concludes period 2 and 3.
Right.
So we've been going for 19 minutes, so 40-minute podcast.
All right. So now we can actually get some interesting jaunt.
Come on. The Revolutionary period is the best period. Don't do me like that. That's my favorite, man.
In my opinion, it's like my least favorite.
Oh, come on. It's our country's roots.
Guys in wigs, dog.
Liberty kids.
Oh,
Ah,
I remember Liberty Kid. That
come
French guy
on.
was like, remember the French kid, like really annoying accent.
Yeah.
God. Sixth grade history. Anyways,
I remember sixth grade Miss. I'm not going to disclose her name on podcast, but she said,
the
"You guys, it's the
W.
end of the year. You guys can watch your last Liberty's kids or the World Cup." Let's just say I was the only kid who voted for Liberty's kids, but you know,
Oh, the how can you miss the World Cup? The World Cup in schools, like
period for Joe. Just
period for it. So we have Jeffersonian America. So we have this guy who really likes agriculture, right? Not big on industry. Not his John, bro. He likes the whole
drunk
tobacco.
farmer John.
He's a libertarian. He was a Democratic Republican.
Hell yeah.
And some important things of this era, we have Marbury versus Madison. Probably one of the, at least in my opinion, in terms of the judicial branch, the most important ruling, I think, judicial review. John Marshall. It seems like he's like still a justice in our Congress or in our oh my god, in our Supreme Court.
Yeah, shout out to Joey.
Shout out to Joey. Literally, I only remember his names and like what he did because of Joey.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, Joey.
The 1950s, he's bringing them up.
Right? I know it's like if only Marshall were in the 1950s, man. He like slams his water bottle on his desk, like So, we wouldn't know about that if it wasn't for you. Thanks, man.
And Louisiana Purchase. So this one is
Napoleon's got some ching ching in his pocket, and Jefferson's got some bang bang land, right?
No, Jefferson had that ching ching. Napoleon had that war, and we're like, dog, you got some nice land out there, right?
Yeah.
Louisiana going literally all the way up into the Midwest looks really nice.
So, and we know you're fighting a war, and you're strapped for that ching ching. So we give you some stacks, and you give us this fat piece of land. And so we signed that jaunt, and our country doubles in size. Except it's not a state; it's just a territory for a really long time. And
yeah. And so that's big. We have Lewis and Clark, which is I believe it's a little bit later, but Lewis and Clark, what it does is he's these two explorers. They go out and set out west, and they get to the Pacific coast. They meet tons of natives, friendly and unfriendly, nearby. Not nearby, but in the west, in the Midwest. We have, and they meet the Warhawks, right? Which is, I believe it's it was Tecumseh, and
if I can interrupt you and comment on Lewis and Clark, I'm sorry, this just randomly popped in my head. In Catholic school, there were like these. It was like first or second grade, and these two girls who were not related in any shape, way, shape, or form started referring to each other
like Lewis and
as cuz. And I was like, why do you call each other cuz? And it's like, cuz we're cousins. It was like, what do you mean you're cousins? You guys ain't related. And they're like, well, we went to Ancestry.com, and it says she's related to Lewis, and I'm related to Clark. And I go, huh, that's weird. So I go home, and I tell my dad about it, and it's like, they think they're related to Lewis and Clark, so they're calling each other cousins now. What the hell is that? It's like, son, you know they're not even related, right? And I was like, oh, man, like,
I'm gonna go shit on these girls.
Yeah, I mean, I might have. I was in second grade. I wasn't balling it like I do today. Oh, hell, I don't even ball today. But, yeah, that happened. So, Tecumseh. So...
I have a feeling the AP exams can be a very humbling experience.
should I tell... Joe, I think I should tell the Tecumseh story. I think it would be only appropriate. So we're playing Jeopardy in class, right? So Joe and I are in a group, and so Mr. Edwards asks a question, and so he's looking for like this guy, like Tecumseh. He's looking for his name.
He's looking for the prophet. Tecumseh's
oh, excuse me. Yeah, so Tecumseh's the instance. He's looking for Joseph the prophet, and so Joe and I did not have our stuff together, and we're like, what is this dude's name? But we're like, we think we know it, like, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. And so we start to write down letters. Joe, I can't do this.
We're was like, bro, I'm pretty sure his name was Wampum. So we literally write it down on our board, present to the whole class. Wampum, wampum. And we were sorry if it offends anybody, because we realized how it could be potentially offensive until
And I
afterwards.
literally didn't
Kind of
even figure it out until like probably 25 minutes ago when I read it. It was like, oh, the Wampanoags. Totally different time period, but that's where we thought it was from. So it's not as bad, but it's still really bad. So yeah, we lost that Jeopardy, needless to say. But
I don't think I've ever won. I don't even think I've ever gotten the top 50% on a Jeopardy.
I mean, we got second place today, but we lost that BS tiebreaker because we wrote down like Hull River Art School and it was the Hudson River Art School. It's like, oh come on, it's some river and it's an art school, right? Like Bob
I
Ross.
actually knew that. I literally knew that. I was bro. Dude, they wish they had me on that.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. Where were we? Damn it.
I have literally no clue. Oh yeah, Tecumseh.
Yes, yes,
Wars against
Tecumseh.
them. I think it's just another shafting. I know they put up really good resistance, but to no avail.
Yeah, so yeah, the
what did I just say? Anyways. Oh my god.
oh my god, Joe.
Alright, War of 1812.
Where the hell are we, Joe? War of 1812. Oh, I'm gonna tell that Civil War story. Remember from Gettysburg, the pop star. I'm gonna tell that story later, but continue.
Right, so, well, there we are. War of 1812. So Britain is pretty much looking at us like, wow, becoming kind of a weak nation. And who's the president? George. It's either James Monroe, John Quincy Adams.
Somebody. I don't know.
Maybe it's James Madison. I think it's James Madison or Monroe. Anyway, they try to come and fight a war with us. We try to invade Canada. No, we don't really gain anything, lose anything. Pretty much a stalemate of a war. They burn Washington D.C. That's a big issue. And if you'd like to tell the story now, go ahead, Matt.
Oh well, we haven't gotten to. We got to do Civil War first,
okay.
And then I'll tell the story.
So we got the corrupt bargain.
The corrupt bargain. So Henry Clay said, "Dog, I'll give you my electoral votes if you give me Secretary of State." And John Quincy Adams said, "Yeah." And so,
I don't really care, you cry.
yeah. And yeah, that's exactly what the whole country did. We all cried. I say we as if we were there. So, by the way, just didn't tell anyone this. We actually travel time when we do our podcast, so we have been to said time period. Just that's where the we get our pictures from. By the way, it's totally not Photoshop. And
yeah. That health one, I really can actually put up 450 pounds, obviously.
That was me, dog. That's me putting up 600, dude.
Oh, 600. Oh,
that was the time I took human growth hormone, remember? Yeah, that was fun.
I sure there wasn't estrogen?
I mean, I was pretty jacked, but,
Anyway.
syringe wasn't labeled. Anyways, yeah.
All right, Alex Rodriguez. So we have
dog. Dog.
The Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine was pretty much telling Spain in South America and also the UK, get away from our hemisphere. Like, this is our hemisphere. It's our sphere of influence.
And it's like, you leave them alone. Because it's like, y'all try.
It was so Monroe Doctrine literally wasn't even cited until I want to say 18.
And it wasn't even the Monroe Doctrine at the time. It was like the Monroe Statement, and it later became the Monroe Doctrine, after he died. Yeah, so
significantly was not relevant for another 70 years.
Yeah, honestly, it did not. No, literally, they did not care.
So that's another thing. Compromise of 18.
Compromise of what?
1820.
Something like
Missouri
that.
Compromise. Missouri Compromise. Wasn't 18.
So the Missouri Compromise was something with Missouri wanted to enter as a state, However, that would tip the balance of 11-11 for slave states and free states. And I forget what the compromise is, Joe.
The compromise is that Missouri slave state, Maine's entered as a free state, and nothing above like the 36th parallel. I forget which parallel. Look it up, guys. We're really tired. Uh,
We're tired.
uh,
Yep. This.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very important compromise. I'm almost certain we'll see a question on that. Age of the Comet Jackson presidency.
Jackson. So yeah.
So we have the Indian Removal Act, Trail of Tears. That's
Yeah.
probably one of the worst things he did, considering he pretty much genocided people. Yeah, that's awful. What's funny, bro? Like, but,
No,
he-
I'm thinking of something else. Just like chill
get
out.
ready for this. Get ready for the story.
I'm thinking about the story. Yeah. So no, I am not laughing at the Indian Removal Act. So yeah.
No.
That was atrocious, and so it was essentially everyone's forced from their homes, and
It's our land. Go to Oklahoma.
and it was just like you need to go into Oklahoma. So it's taken these people who most of them were nomadic, I believe, and it's just like nope, you're sitting here and you're gonna have to figure out how to live stationarily, right? And I mean that was awful, and it's just like they died on the way. If when people died, they weren't allowed to have like funerals for them. It was just like a crap grave and move on. I mean, it was atrocious. It was
yeah,
terrible.
probably one of the worst things in American history, aside from slavery. Really.
Yes, yeah. I would say it's up there.
Certainly a stain.
That's awful.
And then we have Bleeding Kansas. That is
Yes.
Kansas is I don't even think it's a state yet, but
Yeah.
it's bleeding because the fight over slavery.
Yeah. And so this is where the
so-
Republicans come in. So the Republicans were like, "Hey, we have an idea for Kansas, right?" And so Abraham Lincoln, who was a senator, I believe.
Senator, Illinois, something like that.
He was in Congress, all right, just like, and he had an idea, and that happened, and that kind of solved the Kansas issue. But it was slavery versus anti-slavery because it was like kind of on the line, and I believe they just ended up splitting Kansas, or no, it was popular sovereignty. That was the
popular sovereignty comes to become a thing.
yes, and so that becomes
And
a
we'll
huge
talk about
issue.
that later with the Kansas-Nebraska Act, actually. So
Yes, but we had migration because people wanted to vote and all that by their presence, and yeah.
And then we have the bank war. So the National Bank, Andrew Jackson just pretty much gets rid of the National Bank. He believes that, and it is true that it was pretty much only benefiting the rich people in the top society, and
Yeah,
he came from humble beginnings.
and he was a common man guy, and
He
so
low-key destroyed like all currency.
and
He's
so
not big
Henry
Oh.
Clay. Well, no, he didn't. It was the guy after him who did. I'm using air quotes. You can't see that I am, but it didn't happen like the collapse until the guy after him, which I
There you
cannot
go.
think of. Yeah, Joe just put air quotes in the Discord chat, which y'all can't see either. But
What?
yeah.
Keep going.
And so
Then we,
Henry Clay and the banker in chief were like, let's recharter the National Bank early so it falls under Jackson's desk before the next election. And so he can either leave it and let the National Bank exist and then get reelected, or veto it and then lose a bunch of clout and probably lose the election. And so Jackson was like, no. And we didn't have a bank. So, yeah. No more bank.
yeah. And spoil system.
That was
is his-
trying to be a joke, but it wasn't funny.
He was big on the spoil system, so which pretty much is that
huge.
when he pretty much has destroyed 900 federal jobs and said that when you win an election, the president and his party gets the fruit of the fight and is able to put in anybody they want based on their based on party loyalty, right? It won't be for a long time that that is removed. And you have Worcester versus Georgia, which I forgot about this, but it's pretty much believe it was that like a crime was committed. It's pretty much that American law does not exist in Indian territory. Pretty much which come.
Yeah.
This comes from that. Um, and then I
You
think that pretty
have
much leads
Western
West.
expansion, so we have Manifest Destiny with that Turner guy who was like, Manifest Destiny is really cool. And so we had Polk as
Yeah.
our president. And so election of from 1840 to 1848. And so Texas annexation happens.
Right.
The Mexican American War happens. And then we have the whole slavery in the West debate. And so the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was the
Because
treaty.
we absolutely destroyed Mexico because they're kind of a weaker country and we had grown quite a
And
bit at this
then
point.
the Wilmot Proviso, which I don't know what it is.
The Wilmot Proviso was no ban is to ban slavery in new land. Is pretty much what that was, and it did not
Gotcha.
pass. It actually did fail. Still a
Well, no, it
very
passed in the House but failed in the Senate.
right.
I
So
remember that. I don't know. I didn't remember what it was, but I just remember that. So there
but
you go,
if
kids.
it, so it does fail, it is not put over. It is
And
not.
you have the creation of the free.
You pretty much have popular sovereignty where you
Mhm.
can still vote to be a slave state. At this point, the
Free Soil Party exists, and
free
so
soil.
free land, free men, right? Except they were still kind of racist in some way. Like there's something really bad about them, but I kind of forgot. And the Gadsden Purchase,
That
which
is, I actually lived in or twice, two different places in within the Southwest regions, of which Southwest that America actually did buy, um,
legally,
and it's
just want to
legally
point that out.
pretty much to finish a railroad from
Yeah.
east to west.
hmm Sure.
So peace out, peace
And
out. Shout out
then
to my people from Arizona. What's up? Cedar Vista represent.
gang
Um,
gang. And
gang,
then
gang, 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 gang.
California Gold Rush. So that's where the San Francisco 49ers came around because in 49 everyone went over to go get gold and then ghost towns happened. So because all the gold's gone and then everyone left. And so you have ghost towns. And then cowboys, which that's cool. So
Which is the
yeah.
thing about the Cowboys thing. Racism is not a big issue in the West as it is in the East. Um,
Yes.
you pretty much you do have your self-made man.
hmm
Your that fact that if you can work hard and deal
And
with
own a
extra,
Winchester and yeah,
own a
you're good.
Winchester and know how to use it, you're good. It doesn't matter about the color of your skin. Um,
Exactly. And
which is actually not seen so much today due to the whitewashing of movies, but that's how it
yeah.
was. There
I mean
was
I mean
a minority of black people
just
was
imagine, just like picture in your head, John Wayne was black, and it's good, right? Like just like John Wayne, all those Wild West movies, but they were all made in the 50s, so it's a bunch of white people, which is really sad. But yeah, that's it was a bunch of free people on your own, fight for
yep.
yourself, get it done, and work.
And after that, you have the Fugitive Slave Act. This is after you have this is the Compromise of 1850. So we're getting really close to Civil War here, and that's about it's pretty much slavery, bro. Dog.
Hey, I'm muting myself on the podcast, right, dude? Like I'm eating a banana. Chill out, dude.
Are we muted right now?
No, not you. Just keep going.
Okay. Anyways, um, fugitive slaves. So it's pretty much something about basis of it. Slave trade is banned. Slaves are banned in Washington D.C. and when slaves are caught in the North, they are not free. They have to be returned to their
Yes.
owners. But
And so
doesn't really
the
work out that way.
enforcement. Oh, go ahead.
The enforcement was awful. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, well, but that was a very politicized topic. Was do we enforce it or do we not enforce it, based on what the people would like? So that was, an issue for whatever president was in power for that.
and then
And
we have
where are we?
Uncle Tom's Cabin. We have
By Harriet Beecher Stowe.
yeah, Harriet Stowe. It's pretty much the growth of American ideas of more expansionism,
Of
is
abolition. So
literature.
Uncle Tom's Cabin was
Abolition.
essentially, dunking on the South, right? Like it literally. I mean,
That's
there
right,
was
I
another
remember
paper
this.
that was just like straight up facts, and but Uncle Tom's Cabin was literally just like, let's make fun of Southern people. Whoa, right? And both got banned in the South. Freedom of speech, yay. And yeah, because they were just trying to mail it all down to the South, and then the post office would just take it and not ship it. And so then we have the Dred Scott case. Really
And
sad.
so Dred Scott was a slave in Missouri, I want to say,
I
and
believe it was
uh,
Virginia, but I could be wrong.
it was for sure Missouri,
All right.
and he was because I think you're thinking of Nat Turner.
Oh,
Um, Dred Scott was a slave in Missouri, and he was brought up to Wisconsin by his owner, and he pretty much said, "I'm free now because I'm in a free state." And they went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court did not rule in his favor.
because they were
And
all incredibly racist. I mean, I remember
they
reviewing
literally
it in Gov. It was disgusting what they said.
they literally just told them the fact that
It's
they
like
can't
because your property, of
you can't
course
even
not.
have this case.
You
Like you
can't.
can't
You,
like
it's
the fact
like
that
it's like you're not even a human. You can't have this case. It's absolutely atrocious. One of the things that really makes me sad to be an American. But I hope that
and then
that we're a lot
you
better now.
have the tariff of abominations,
Yes,
and that
that was
leads to
bad.
that pretty much leads to secession.
Yes.
South
So
Carolina secedes, and the only reason why Virginia secedes because South Carolina said that we'll put our new country's capital of the Confederate States of America in Richmond, and so this pretty much begins a long, drawn-out war. Uh, and the North was not expecting this; they were expecting the Anaconda Plan, which is pretty much a swift war, one of attrition that would be able to overflow them within time. It should not be that long of a war, and that's not what happened. You had the Battle Bull Run, right? I think that was earlier on the war, but oh no, okay, no, hold on, wait. It was how did this go?
that was Bull Run,
It was Sumter, right? So Sumter,
Sumter,
right?
Bull
Bull
Run,
Run, and
and
then
Cheatham.
Antietam's a big one because
That
it's
was
very
over
important
the
war.
Mississippi River, which is huge.
Yeah, it pretty much gave. No, Antietam was not Mississippi. That was Maryland,
Oh,
and
excuse me.
Antietam is I've actually been in that battlefield. It's not too far from here. It's not as far from here as Gettysburg. Anyway,
Which we
um,
went to as well.
hell
Yeah, but that's where my story's gonna come up. I know y'all waiting for that. But
yeah.
anyways,
And then and then Antietam's significant because the South does not win, and no foreign help to the South will come because they cannot win battles.
yes, and
Um,
I mean the foreign help was very limited for both sides. Obviously both sides were voguing for the help of Europe, and they really
and
just end all be all decided to remain neutral. So,
right.
yeah.
And then we had Gettysburg, which is the last Southern offensive to the north by Lee. It fails,
And
and
the turning point of the war. So,
right,
the Gettysburg story. Um, oh dear, where do I start? So, there is this old guy living in Gettysburg. He was a veteran of the War of 1812, and he brought out his rifle from the War of 1812. So he's an old dude with an old rifle. I mean, it had like a third of the fire rate of what all the Confederates were using. Went out of his house, went right up the hill, and shot like 5 Confederates, right, just on the spot. And he joined the Union forces. They won the Battle of Gettysburg, and he went on to live the rest of his life as a celebrity. Like I,
look, okay. Here's the crazy part about this. So Matt and I actually went to Gettysburg.
yeah,
This October, I think it's 2 Octobers ago. It was a long time ago.
it was
Anyway,
it was a ways.
and this guy literally got shot like 5 times that day, and then
Yeah,
he killed like 10 Confederates. And he said, "I've had enough." And this guy's like in his 70s. I've had enough. I'm gonna go to sleep now. Dude really had like you just had no shits to give.
he
like,
didn't. Yeah, I remember
he's
like sitting with you and Mr. Moe in the car, and it was just like he shot 10 Confederates and then decided I've had enough and retired. Right? Like I mean, he just
we were
like
listening to like the
stop.
guide along.
Yeah, to like that guide along, thing in your
Tour.
car. Yeah. He went on to be a celebrity. He got shot 5 times, and yeah.
And
So,
then you have Vicksburg, which is the Mississippi River one, and
mhm.
that's big because it gives us control of all the waterway. And then we end up having,
The very
um,
controversial Sherman March to the Sea, where they
and
decide
Sherman was
to.
like, "Well, South, I'm gonna make you pay," and burnt literally everything from like northern Georgia to the sea at
Yeah,
Georgia.
and they still named a
Pill
tank after him. So yeah.
and they pretty much pillaged the South. Appomattox, that's the place where um, what's it called? Appomattox is a place where the war ended. They signed the treaty, and we have border states. After that, we have border states, and this is more during the time of border states. And this is what happens is for Antietam. Another big thing about Antietam, Abraham Lincoln puts the not the 14th Amendment, the Emancipation Proclamation. He does that in January of 1863, pretty much saying any conquered southern territory that is not a border state, all slavery is legal there. And so pretty much every state that isn't like Kentucky, Delaware, Maryland, and Missouri, I believe. And if we conquer you, so example, Tennessee or Georgia, the slaves there are now free because that land is conquered. And then that leads to people being really pissed off. Lincoln is assassinated.
Hold on. So, I would like to remind you, Joe, we have just hit the 46-minute mark. So, after the war, Abraham Lincoln was sad. I mean, this dude was sad. And his wife said, "Cheer up, Abe. Let's go see a play." And we know how it goes down from there. He gets murked, and
Jesus.
that's I should not say that about a president, but he gets shot, and John Wilkes Booth, and they he died a little while later, and so after that happens, it's because he thought he'd be a hero for the South, right? John Wilkes Booth, he was not, and the whole country was torn because Lincoln was kind of the guy who held the whole country together, and then Johnson, the most openly racist president in American history, comes right after, and then Reconstruction becomes very difficult. Joe actually showed me a meme at lunch today where it was like this, I don't know, like 8-year-old kid drinking like that little thing of medicine, and so the kid is labeled the South, and then the medicine cup is labeled like Reconstruction, and the kid had the most like disgusted look on his face, like I'm not taking that.
Southern Democrats.
Oh, Southern Democrats. It was like Reconstruction. It was like, yeah. So we were probably laughing about that for a good 50 minutes of our lunch block, but that happens, and then we have a lot of Reconstruction's issues. We have the Freedmen's Bureau, so that helps newly freed slaves get a new life. Really solid move, honestly. Like we're both libertarians here, but the Freedmen's Bureau, like, man, like I don't want to say bureaucracy is good, but like that was a good thing. So that happens. 13th Amendment, abolish slavery. Joe, take it.
14th Amendment is that if you're pretty much born in the United States, you are a citizen, and the 15th is your voting one, saying no matter what,
yes,
or not gender, but no matter what race you are, or no matter how you were prior to servitude or status of servitude, you have the right to vote.
Yes.
So all of the Reconstruction amendments, and those are very, very popular. And we have the impeachment of Johnson. I forget exactly why, but the dude was a fucking racist. Just know that. Guy was an asshole.
Joe, Mr. Edwards is going to watch this podcast and be like, man, like these guys really don't want to take that test.
Like I said, a humbling experience.
Oh, my lord. And so, yeah, he was short one vote. He was shy one vote. He didn't pull a Nixon and be like, oh, my lord, I'm going to get impeached. He's like, I hate people who aren't white. And got away with it, which is really sad. And, yeah, so one vote. One vote. If someone was just a little less racist, we wouldn't have Johnson, but hell. Then Reconstruction continues, right? And so we have this, it starts really strict to become a state again, and then it gets really loose to become a state again.
Right.
And then we have Grant come in sometime. Carpetbaggers happen. That's
Northerners from the Northerners go to the South to pretty much invest, and they kind of look at it as these people are coming to take our money.
And it was bad, yeah. And then
we have scallywags as well, which is Southerners who pretty much are pro-North, right?
Yeah.
And you also have the KKK, which has not grown too much yet. We have the Ku Klux Klan, who wreaks terror among the black community.
Yes.
I mean, black people just killed in the streets. Rarely any
there was
justice for
no jury, no trial. It was just hanging.
lynching.
It was just, and so this is the very dark beginning of lynching in our country, and Oh my God, Joe! Really, the last bullet point in our notes is Jim Crow laws. We're really going to end a podcast on Jim Crow laws? Are you
Well,
serious?
Jim Crow is like what, the 1870s when it first comes to
Yeah.
be. It's after the Black Codes, and
Yes.
well, let's talk about the Black Codes. It's pretty much black people can't do things. They can't go in the city without a white person. They can't hold guns. They're pretty much denied rights. They're
They can't
slaves, but
travel as
they're
as
not
they
slaves
please.
on paper, pretty much, because of tenant farming, which is where for black people to like farm land or like live in
It's
someone's house,
essentially
they
it's
had
a poverty trap. That speaking
they,
honestly,
they,
that's what it was. Um, yeah. I mean,
and
sharecropping always is. Tenant farming, it's all the same.
it
Just
was
you're essentially a slave. That's you could
and
almost
then
never get
Jim
your
Crow,
freedom.
and then after Jim Crow, you pretty much have state enforced. Like it before, prior to that, it wasn't by the state; it was more localized. But all the localized areas were pretty much the same. Jim Crow, state enforced laws, discrimination,
Yeah.
and
And
that
then
is.
something after Jim Crow. We can't end a podcast on Jim Crow. Come on, man. What?
Dude, you want to tell me what happened in the 1870s?
I will pull it up right now. 1870s
Cool stuff.
important stuff. All right. 1870 historical events. Oh boy. Um, the U.S. Mint in Carson City, Nevada begins issuing coins. Yeah! Hey! Man, I can't wait to travel to Carson City to get some coins, man. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not, okay. So like, okay, here, 1870, right? First section of Atlantic City Boardwalk opens.
ooh, yeah, Atlantic City Boardwalk. So now you got
Death of
coins and you got the boardwalk. All right. What else we got?
let's see. We got 1871. James Weldon Johnson is born.
Ooh, I don't know who he is, but that's cool. Boss
18
Tweed, oh, he was arrested in 1871. That's a good thing. Boss Tweed, gets arrested. Um, and that kind of goes into the whole muckraker thing. Yellowstone Park, established 1872, first national park. There we go. That's a great note to end our podcast on. Good luck on your test tomorrow, everybody. We'll see you there.
humbling.
Very humbling
Good
experience.
luck.
Buena suerte. This has been the Young Americans Podcast. Signing off.
I take my heart into battle, give that freedom belly rattle, get my independent sign, declare it on the dotted line. Let Philadelphia freedom ring and patriotic voices sing. Red, white, blue, never give up. You represent America.
Hoping and praying for a brighter day. I listen to my